place to fall down.
Yeah. What I end up in.
So why didn't you think it happened in other parts of the world, and why did they mainly take to farming in Europe and Asia, and not Africa?
Well, if you take the line that farming is a disaster for human beings, they'll only do it under duress. Because basically, once you, not only farming animals, but also farming plants, you actually have to work much harder. So why should you bother to work much harder? There are only three main reasons. One is your population explodes. And the areas where civilizations developed were areas where of very fertile land in the fertile Mesopotamian basin in southern China, where the population probably exploded. It also intersected with the second thing, which was a big climatic change. Having built up quite a lot of population and engaging in kind of hobby farming, just a little bit of maize and millet and so on, and a few animals, the population, there was an ice age, and suddenly the water rose, it got colder, and quite a dense population was forced into a very difficult ecological situation where they had to intensify their farming if they were going to survive. So it was a crisis. Now, both those things, very dense population and a crisis, occurring in an area where you already had some domestication of animals and plants, just gave the boost and a warmth to the situation. And very soon a third factor forced the peasantry to work very hard and to give them taxes. Whereas in Africa and Australia and South America, although it happened a little bit in South America, people, if they were told, you go and dig 8 hours a day there and give me half your produce, they say, no thanks, I'm off. There's a huge amount of space over there, and they just disappear. They vote with their feet. Well, if you're stuck in a little narrow river valley of good land, you really can't leave. And very soon, the people in charge have the military power and the social power to force you, and you get the development of slavery, serfdom, hierarchy, military conquest. So the history of the last 4,000 or 5,000 years has been one of destruction, oppression, and enormous social stratification, from which we've only really partly escaped in the last 200 years. So many people think that after a long period of good living as hunters and gatherers, yes, you produce much more with these animals and plants, but the standard of living of the mass of mankind, in terms of the amount of work they had to do, the oppressions they suffered, actually declined and declined. And there's only some signs of a pickup in the last 200 years with the second great revolution, which is the Industrial Revolution. This little buffalo here represents one of the great revolutions, one of the two great revolutions in human history. That is the domestication of plants and animals. For thousands of years, human beings had hunted and gathered. And then came this domestication. Well, most of us think of this as a necessary and inevitable progress of human beings. But there is a theory that, in fact, it was both accidental and a disaster. A disaster because it led, in fact, to much more hard work for human beings and the growth of stratification and the growth of large warfare and oppression. And so, if this is partially true, and people would have preferred to stay as hunters and gatherers, why did they move in this direction? Well, one part of the answer is that, in fact, human beings are naturally very poorly endowed with means of gaining a living. If you look at their bodies, they don't have fur or feathers, so they have to have clothes. Their eyesight is not very good, so anything that can extend that is good. Their ears are not very good. They haven't got a very good sense of smell, so they employ dogs as a surrogate for their noses. Their teeth, they don't have good chomping teeth. They don't have claws. They can't run very fast. So basically they're a wreck. They really don't have much going for them except a very good brain. And they used this brain to invent something which no animal has. Animals have natural tools, like these horns, growing off them, but they don't use any more tools. Human beings use tools which are basically adaptable extensions of the various parts of their bodies. For example, a hoe is an extension of a claw, and so is a plough. So human beings used tools But we tend to think of tools as things like spades and hoes and guns. In fact, an animal is another human tool. In this case, what was being extended was the human gut and the human stomach. Humans again have very poor stomachs. They can't digest very much. For instance, if I try and eat this leaf, this tough leaf from the forest, I'd start chewing it and I'd get terrible stomach ache and I wouldn't be able to release the energy in this at all. On the other hand, if I hand it to my friend here, if he's hungry, he would digest this, and by doing that he would produce all sorts of benefits for me. For starters, if I just chop off his head, I have all this lovely meat. Secondly, if I want to use his hide for leather or his horns for drinking cups, I've got that. Thirdly, if it was a she, I would get all this delicious buffalo milk. Fourthly, I get all the manure to take down on the fields. So basically, this is the first human machine, a machine for transforming energy from the sun through plants to human use. And this machine is used in the Himalayas. The energy from the forest is taken down through the village. People eat and drink some of it, then it goes down onto the rice fields and then it's brought back. So it's a tremendous buffalo machine. And of course it's only one of a number of animals that can be used by human beings: horses, sheep, goats, and so on.